The galaxy had always watched Earth from far away. Most species in the coalition saw humans as loud, unpredictable, and strangely emotional. They grew fast, fought hard, loved deeply, and never stayed quiet for long. To the older civilizations, this made Earth look dangerous. They whispered in long meetings that humans were growing too quickly. Their inventions improved every year. Their machines reached farther into space. Their signals filled the dark sky like sparks. The coalition feared those sparks would one day become a fire they could not control. For many years, the species argued about what to do with Earth. Some said humans should be monitored. Others said Earth should join the galaxy peacefully. But the oldest empires claimed that humans should be stopped before they became strong enough to rival anyone. They talked about human bravery as if it were a threat. They talked about human creativity as if it were a weapon. They pointed at Earth and said that the day would come when humanity would leave their small blue world and step into the galaxy with ideas no one could predict. The final meeting took place on a massive station that floated above a golden star. Leaders from dozens of species stood around a circular platform that glowed underneath their feet. Each one had already studied Earth for years. Each one knew that humans were not united, not fully advanced, and not prepared for a war beyond their world. But they also knew something else. Humans adapted faster than any species they had ever seen. This frightened them more than any weapon. The voting began in silence. One species after another raised their hands, fins, claws, or whatever limbs they used to signal agreement. Every single vote was the same. The decision was complete before the last species even stepped forward. The coalition had chosen to subjugate Earth. They wanted to control it before it grew too strong. Some believed that the humans would never know what happened. Others hoped the invasion would end quickly. A few admitted quietly that they felt sorry for humans, but they did nothing to stop the decision. While this historic vote was happening far away in space, the people of Earth lived their normal lives. They woke up for school or work. They sat in traffic and complained about the weather. They cooked meals, watched shows, argued, laughed, and made plans for tomorrow. No one on Earth had any idea that the galaxy had decided their future. To humans, the night sky was still peaceful. Stars looked small and harmless. Satellites blinked softly as they moved in quiet orbits. It was impossible for anyone to imagine that an entire arm of the galaxy was preparing to arrive with chains dot inside the coalition station. The leaders began giving orders. Fleets were moved into position near hidden warp points. Engineers prepared jamming devices designed to blind Earth's technology. Strategists studied maps of Earth's major cities, searching for the fastest way to force surrender. Every species prepared in their own way. Some trained soldiers. Some manufactured weapons. Some sent scouts to Earth's moon to gather data. Everyone believed the same thing. Humans would fall quickly. They would not be ready. They would not know how to resist. And once Earth was under control, the galaxy would be safe from the dangerous potential of humanity. But even as they planned, a sense of unease grew. A few younger officers questioned the vote. They asked if it was right to attack a species that had never attacked anyone. They asked if fear was a fair reason for war. But their concerns were dismissed by older voices who insisted that humans were too unpredictable. They believed humans were a risk that could not be ignored, that the coalition's arguments grew softer as the operation continued. Soon silence replaced debate. Every species knew the decision was final. There was no turning back. The invasion was marked on their schedules. Fleets were being armed. Weapons were being tested. The countdown had begun. Across the galaxy, a large fleet gathered near a star system close to Earth's region of space. The ships were shaped differently, depending on their creators, but together they formed a floating city of metal and light. These ships carried weapons Earth had never imagined and machines the human mind could not yet build. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked invincible. The Coalition was confident. They had done this many times before with other worlds. Humanity, they believed, would be the same. But what they did not understand was simple. Humans were not like other worlds. Humans changed too fast. Humans improvised even faster. Humans adapted in ways no one could predict. The Coalition had studied Earth with advanced sensors, but they had not studied the spirit inside humans. They had not seen the determination that came alive when humans were pushed into danger. They had not understood that fear did not break humans. It fueled them. While the invasion fleets finished their preparations, Earth continued to live in peace. Children played outside, unaware of anything beyond their small neighborhoods. Workers rushed through busy mornings, never guessing a galactic decision had targeted their world. Families planned vacations. Artists created music and stories. Scientists searched for better cures. No one imagined that tomorrow might not belong to them. There were a few early signs that something strange was happening. A group of astronomers noticed a brief flicker near the orbit of Mars, but they dismissed it as a glitch. A satellite technician in a quiet control room saw unusual interference for a split second and thought it was a normal malfunction. A radio operator heard a faint signal that repeated once then vanished, and he assumed it was an echo. These small clues passed through unnoticed, lost in the rush of daily life. Back on the Coalition station, the final confirmation was given. The vote had been recorded and stored for history. Every species had agreed. Earth would be subdued. Humanity would be placed under supervision. The Coalition leaders believed they had prevented a future conflict. They believed they were acting wisely, ensuring the safety of a galaxy by acting early. In their minds, this was not the start of a war. It was the beginning of control. Quiet alarms flashed inside the command center as the fleets prepared to warp toward Earth. Officers stood at their stations, checking every detail. Maps of Earth rotated in the air as planning systems marked locations for landings. Schedules were made for capturing communication towers and disabling defenses. The invasion path was set. Everything was organized. Everything looked easy. But somewhere deep inside the Coalition, a small group of young recruits watched the plan with growing discomfort. They whispered among themselves, asking if humanity would fight. They wondered what humans would do when faced with overwhelming power. None of them knew the answer, but they could sense that the older leaders were too confident. They could feel that something was wrong. Still, the vote had been made. Orders were orders. The fleets could not be stopped. In the quiet darkness of space, the Armada activated its jump drives. The stars bent. The ships vanished. And in that moment, the fate of Earth began to shift. The humans still slept peacefully, completely unaware that the galaxy had chosen them. Completely unaware that they had just been marked as a threat. Completely unaware that visitors from beyond the stars were already on their way, expecting surrender. If only the Coalition had understood humans better, they might have hesitated. They might have realized that a cornered human is more dangerous than a whole army. They might have understood that humans do not break the way other species do. But they did not understand, and now they would soon learn. The night before everything changed, Earth looked peaceful from orbit. Clouds drifted slowly over oceans. City lights glowed like soft threads across the dark surface. The world had no idea that something enormous was approaching. People were asleep in their homes, driving along empty highways, scrolling on their phones, or working late shifts. Everything felt normal. Far above this calm world, the Coalition fleets were already arriving. Their ships slipped out of warp like shadows, pulling themselves out of darkness. Some were small and fast, shaped like sharp blades. Others were huge and carried soldiers, machines, and heavy equipment. To them, Earth looked harmless, almost too quiet. Many officers wondered why the older leaders were so frightened of these humans. From space, humans looked small and peaceful, but the leaders did not trust that image. They had seen too much of human history, too much rebellion, too much courage, too much speed and learning. The first wave of the invasion was not meant to be violent. Their plan was to shut down Earth's communication and satellites. After that, they wanted to land quietly and take control before humans could react. The coalition believed this was the kindest way to subdue a world. Quick, silent, efficient. They wanted no resistance. They wanted compliance. Inside the main command ship, officers watched screens filled with numbers, signals, maps, and data streams from Earth. Their systems showed every satellite orbiting the planet. They marked each one as a target. The moment the operation began, they started jamming Earth's signals. They sent pulses of energy at communication lines around the world. They disabled several satellites with precision bursts of light. To them, this was only the first step. They thought humans would never even realize who had attacked them. Back on Earth, the first signs of trouble appeared in small ways. A weather satellite suddenly stopped sending images. A communication network in a large city flickered for a moment, then went offline for a few seconds. A team of scientists monitoring. Space signals noticed strange interference patterns, but they thought it was a normal glitch. No one connected these events to an alien invasion. Why would they? Humans believed they were alone. Then something stranger happened. A group of amateur astronomers watching the sky saw a quick flash near the moon. It happened so fast that they thought they imagined it. Another flash appeared in a different part of the sky. Then another. People posted about it online, asking if anyone else saw the lights. Others replied that it was probably a satellite or a plane. The idea of something larger never crossed their minds. Inside the coalition fleet, everything looked perfect. The jamming systems were working. Satellites had been blinded. Earth's defenses were almost completely silent. The officers congratulated themselves. They believed the invasion would be over before sunrise. They believed humans would surrender quickly, overwhelmed by the sudden shutdown of their world. But their confidence started to crack when one of the jamming ships malfunctioned. A human satellite managed to send a signal before shutting down. It was damaged, but still working enough to detect unusual activity. Its last transmission reached Earth and confused the scientists monitoring it. The message was short, only fragments of numbers, but those numbers were not normal. They did not match any known natural event. Something was happening in orbit. A researcher stared at the data, trying to make sense of it. He felt a strange worry growing inside him. He called his supervisor, who also looked puzzled. They did not know what it meant, but they could feel something was wrong. They contacted their space agency, and soon more eyes were studying the strange readings. The coalition didn't notice this slip. They were too focused on the next part of their plan. The second wave of ships began moving toward Earth's atmosphere. They glided like silent shadows, expecting no resistance. They aimed for large open fields, deserts, and quiet coastline areas where humans wouldn't notice them at first. Their goal was to land softly, spread out, and then move inward toward major cities. As the ships descended, the air around them shimmered. Birds scattered in confusion. Wind patterns changed. In some small towns, people walking outside looked up and saw faint lines streaking across the sky. At first, they thought they were meteors. But meteors didn't move with such purpose. Meteors didn't slow down. Meteors didn't hover. A group of friends sitting around a late-night fire in a rural area saw one of the ships pass overhead. They stood up, stunned. The object was too large to be a plane, and it made no sound. One of them reached for his phone to record it, but the moment he held up the camera, the device went black. The ship vanished behind clouds, leaving the group speechless and confused. The coalition forces landed quietly in empty areas. Their machines unfolded like metal insects, adjusting to Earth's gravity. Soldiers stepped out into the fresh air, expecting no trouble. They activated scanning devices to map nearby structures and life signs. Everything looked simple. Everything looked under control, but Earth was not fully blind. Some military bases noticed strange disturbances on their radars. They saw shapes that did not match any known aircraft. Their alarms went off, and the officers inside the bases jumped to action. They tried contacting nearby stations, but communication lines were unstable. Messages were cut, delayed, or filled with static. This raised even more alarm. Something was clearly happening. In one coastal town, a fisherman leaving for the early morning catch noticed something unusual near the horizon. At first, it looked like a large, dark cloud, but then he realized it was moving differently. It wasn't shaped like anything natural. It didn't look like any ship he knew. He felt a chill run through him and turned his boat back around. By the time he reached the shore, he was shaking as he described what he saw. People didn't believe him at first, but his fear was real. Meanwhile, the coalition was ready to begin the third phase, taking control of communications. They wanted every TV, radio, and phone signal to go silent. They intended to replace Earth's broadcasts with their own message once humans were isolated. They would tell the world to surrender. They believed that once they spoke, humans would obey. But when they initiated the next step, something unexpected happened. The jamming systems that were supposed to silence everything encountered resistance. Earth's networks were patchy, unstable, but not fully disabled. Signals continued to bounce from tower to tower. A few lines stayed alive. Humans were trying to fight the shutdown, even without knowing the cause. The coalition officers frowned at the screens. They had invaded many worlds, but none had reacted this quickly, especially not during the first hours. They assumed Earth's systems would collapse instantly. Yet here they were, glitchy but persistent, fighting to stay alive. Down on Earth, confusion spread. Television screens flickered. Some channels cut to static. Radio stations played broken sound. People checked their phones, seeing the signal drop to zero, then jump back up, then fall again. Social media filled with questions. People were scared, but they did not panic yet. They thought it was maybe a global outage, a cyber attack, or some strange natural event. But then the sky changed. Across the world, people looked up and saw streaks of light, dark objects, and strange shapes moving against the stars. Some were large enough to block out pieces of the sky. Others were small and fast. Panic finally hit. People began to understand. This was not an outage. This was not an accident. Something from outside, something not human, was here. The first emergency calls overwhelmed local stations. Reports came in from multiple countries at the same time. Lights in the sky, strange aircraft, objects landing in fields, phones dying, people running, people crying, confusion everywhere. Inside the coalition command ship, things were no longer calm. Officers worked faster, sending more commands, trying to bring everything back under their control. They believed they still had the advantage. They believed they only needed a little more time to silence Earth completely. But Earth was waking up. Governments scrambled to understand the threat. Military units rushed to bases, even with poor communication. Civilians shared videos and sightings, even as their devices flickered on and off. People started gathering in homes, basements, and community centers, trying to stay together. Fear spread quickly, but so did determination. Earth had been caught off guard, but humans were not collapsing. They were reacting. They were adapting. They were preparing. The coalition expected silence, What they found was resistance beginning to rise, and this was only the first night. The sun rose over Earth in a strange way that morning. It was still the same sun, still the same sky, but something felt different. People everywhere woke up earlier than usual because of the noise, the lights, or simply because they felt uneasy. Birds behaved oddly. Dogs barked at empty air. The world seemed to be holding its breath. By now, billions of people had seen at least one strange thing in the sky. Some saw objects moving too smoothly to be planes. Others heard a deep humming that didn't sound like anything familiar. Videos spread online before the networks collapsed again. Even without perfect signals, the world understood one thing. This was not human technology. Inside Earth's governments, panic mixed with responsibility. Military officers rushed to briefing rooms. Scientists were pulled from their homes. Emergency teams assembled. No one had a full picture of what was happening, but everyone knew it was serious. Something was invading. Something organized. The first coalition landers touched down far from major cities, just like they had planned. They looked like giant black stones standing upright in open fields. Mechanical legs unfolded from them, pressing into the soil. Their surfaces changed color to blend with the environment. Then they opened, and teams of alien soldiers stepped out. They moved quietly, scanning their surroundings. Their mission was simple. They were supposed to move forward and secure key areas before humans could respond. But humans did. Respond immediately. The first unexpected moment happened in a wide farmland region on the edge of a quiet valley. A group of local farmers saw one of the strange machines land near their fields. They had no idea what it was, but they were not the type to run away. They stayed hidden behind old equipment, watching closely. When the machine opened and creatures stepped out, they realized this was not a human-made object. It was something else, something not from Earth. One of the farmers quietly used a small radio to warn nearby towns. The message was short and shaky, but it was enough to alert others. Within minutes, word spread through small communities. People hiding inside their houses lifted binoculars to watch the newcomers. The aliens expected silence. Instead, they were being observed by dozens of pairs of human eyes. The first human counterattack didn't come from a military jet or a high-tech weapon. It came from a simple decision made by ordinary people who refused to let strangers walk across their land without resistance. A group of farmers circled around the alien equipment with old trucks, tractors, and improvised tools. They didn't know if this would work, but they knew they couldn't sit still. From the coalition soldiers' point of view, it looked ridiculous. They saw vehicles moving slowly toward them, driven by civilians with no armor, no technology, nothing dangerous. They did not understand what humans were doing. They believed these people would surrender easily. They were wrong. The farmers didn't try to attack the soldiers directly. Instead, they crashed their trucks into the machine that had landed. The machine toppled and hit the ground with a heavy thud. Sparks flew. Smoke rose. And for the first time since the invasion began, the coalition realized Earth would not be easy. On the coalition ships still in orbit, officers watched the footage captured by their drones. They stared in disbelief. They could not understand why humans fought so aggressively, so quickly, with so little fear. They had seen worlds surrender in minutes before. But humans were not surrendering. They were improvising. They were reacting with speed the coalition had not predicted. At the same time, in one of Earth's military bases, engineers and scientists were examining pieces of alien debris that had fallen from the sky earlier. One broken drone had crashed into the desert, and a recovery team had quickly retrieved it. They brought it to the base, where scientists studied it with excitement and confusion. What shocked them most was how advanced the technology looked. Metals they had never seen. energy systems they couldn't identify. But instead of despairing, the scientists became more focused. They broke open panels. They took samples. They tested small circuits. Within hours, they understood enough to build simple countermeasures. One scientist realized that the alien drones communicated using specific radio frequencies. If those frequencies were disrupted, the drones might malfunction. Earth already had radio equipment. They just needed to modify it. In a matter of hours, they created a rough device capable of sending strong pulses in those frequencies. This should have taken weeks. But humans did it in half a day. They tested the device by aiming it at a crashed drone. The drone flickered, sparked, and shut off completely. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the result. And a wave of excitement spread across the base. This was something real, something powerful, something humans could use. The news spread quickly through military channels. Bases across the country started building their own pulse devices. They mounted them on trucks, jeeps, rooftops, anything with power. Humans were adapting, just as the coalition had feared. While Earth scientists were making progress, civilians everywhere were creating their own defense. In small towns, people formed groups to watch the skies and warn others of incoming objects. In cities, people helped police direct crowds and keep streets from clogging. Communities shared resources. Neighbors supported each other. Fear was everywhere, but cooperation was everywhere too. The coalition underestimated this spirit. They thought humans were separated, disorganized, and weakened by their differences. They didn't understand that when danger comes from outside, humans stand together. One group of young volunteers set up a lookout point on top of an old apartment building. They used binoculars and small radios to report where the alien crafts were moving. A mother of 3 helped translate people's messages for those who couldn't understand them. A group of teenagers carried water and food up and down the stairs. No one was trained. No one was forced. They just helped because that's what humans do. Back in the fields where the first lander had been toppled, the aliens regrouped. They tried to set up a new machine, but humans kept interfering. More locals arrived with whatever they could find: ropes, wires, simple tools. They didn't attack the aliens directly. They just targeted their machines, disrupting equipment, disabling scanners, stealing power cells, and running away before the aliens could catch them. This confused the aliens even more. They were used to enemies with structured armies. But humans behaved like a storm, unpredictable everywhere, and impossible to plan for. In another part of the world, a crashed alien pod became the center of a surprising discovery. A group of Earth engineers found a glowing cube inside it. The cube hummed softly and changed color when touched. They realized it powered the pod. Without knowing exactly how it worked, they connected it to simple wires and ran tests. The cube produced energy far beyond anything humans had. This small discovery fueled the hope that Earth could learn much more. Meanwhile, on the coalition command ship, arguments began. Officers blamed researchers for underestimating humans. Researchers blamed leaders for pushing the invasion too early. The commanders tried to calm everyone by insisting Earth was still weaker. They said the humans were just reacting emotionally. They claimed humans would tire soon, but deep down, many of them felt doubt growing. Something about humans intimidated them. Humans were not following predictable patterns. Humans were not surrendering. Instead, humanity was growing stronger with each passing hour. Reports came in of more landers being disabled by simple human strategies. A group of hikers had used metal rods to jam the legs of a landing machine. A group of workers in a coastal town had trapped an alien device under fishing nets and heavy chains. Everywhere the aliens went, humans found ways to slow them, confuse them, block them, or fight them. Human creativity was turning everyday objects into tools of resistance. Coalition soldiers had trained for advanced battles with powerful enemies. They had not trained for humans who turned tractors, fishing nets, or loose wires into weapons. On Earth's side, courage spread faster than fear. Videos of humans resisting small alien groups started circulating. People saw others standing up, and they felt braver. Families stayed together, helping each other stay calm. Some people prayed. Others stayed busy cooking or cleaning to distract themselves. Everyone found a way to cope. The invasion had entered a phase the coalition never predicted. Humans weren't just defending themselves. They were learning, adapting, and starting to fight back. Coalition leaders watched the growing chaos on their screens. They saw their ships being damaged. They saw their soldiers struggling. They saw Earth refusing to fall. And for the first time since the invasion began, the coalition felt something they had never expected to feel. They felt fear. The turning point of the invasion did not begin with a giant explosion or a heroic speech. It began with silence. Not the calm kind of silence, but the heavy kind that fills the air right before something big happens. Humans everywhere could feel it, even if they didn't know why. The invasion had been going on long enough that people were exhausted, terrified, and confused. But instead of giving up, they grew sharper. They were paying attention now. In a secure underground base, a small group of soldiers escorted a captured coalition officer through dim hallways. The officer was not what most people expected. It didn't roar, threaten, or try to break free. It simply watched everything quietly, its eyes scanning every detail. It seemed calm, but deep inside, it was tense. It had never been captured before. No human had ever captured one of its kind. This alone shook the coalition's confidence. The soldiers brought it into a well-lit room with clean floors and metal tables. There were no weapons pointed at it, no shouting, no cruelty. The humans simply sat down and began asking questions. They weren't trying to harm the officer. They were trying to understand. The officer didn't speak at first. It didn't trust humans, and it assumed humans would never understand its language or its thoughts. But then one of the scientists placed a small device on the table, a device created from the alien drone parts they had studied earlier. The device could translate certain frequencies. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. The officer's eyes widened. How did humans build something like this so fast? How did they learn the coalition's frequencies in such a short time? The officer felt a quiet worry forming inside. The coalition had not expected this. With the device active, the officer finally spoke. Its voice sounded strange, layered, and distant, but humans could still make sense of it. It told them something shocking, something that changed everything. The coalition's ships, especially their command vessels, had a weakness. Their energy systems were designed to be efficient, but not to withstand the kind of electromagnetic interference humans could create. If humans could generate pulses strong enough and at the right frequency, they could shut down entire fleets. Not just drones, not just small devices. Even the largest ships, the humans listening froze. They couldn't believe the officer was revealing this. For a moment, it felt like a trick. But the officer insisted it was real. When they asked why it was telling them this, the officer gave a simple answer. It had seen the way humans fought. It had seen the fearlessness of humans. It had seen communities forming, people working together, civilians risking their lives for others. It had never seen a species like this. The officer admitted quietly that if the invasion continued, both sides would suffer greatly. And deep inside, even the officer realized something else. Maybe the coalition had made a mistake. The humans in the room exchanged looks. They did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They simply nodded. This information could change the entire war. Within hours, teams of scientists, engineers, soldiers, and radio specialists gathered inside command centers. They worked nonstop, adjusting frequencies, building pulse generators, connecting wires, and testing equipment. They didn't know if it would work on the larger ships, but they had to try. Outside, the world was still shaking with fear and chaos. Alien landers moved through forests and deserts. Humans continued resisting wherever they could. Families hid in basements. Young people guarded rooftops. Rescuers helped the injured. Everyone was holding on, but in one base, a single discovery was about to shift the entire war. The first test of the new pulse device happened late in the night. The sky was cloudy, hiding most of the stars. A large coalition drone flew overhead, scanning the area for human activity. Normally, it would have detected anything unusual. But this time, it didn't see the small human team below. Hiding behind an old building dot, they aimed the device at the drone and activated it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint crackling sound filled the air. The drone slowed, glitched, and suddenly dropped straight down. It crashed into the ground with a loud metallic thud. The team stared in disbelief. It worked. It actually worked. News of this success spread quickly through military channels. But no one celebrated yet. One drone was nothing compared to the huge ships in orbit. If the device failed on the larger vessels, none of this would matter. So the teams kept working, adjusting the frequency and increasing the power. They built bigger coils, thicker cables, and stronger generators. They pushed their limits. People who had not slept in days kept going, fueled by determination and fear of what would happen if they failed. Meanwhile, the coalition leaders in orbit were arguing again. They were frustrated by the growing resistance on Earth. Reports came in of more machines being disabled, more soldiers being surrounded, more unexpected human tactics. The coalition had believed the invasion would last hours, not days. They had believed Earth would fall silently. Not fight like this. The leaders didn't know that humans were now preparing something that could destroy their advantage completely. The final test came just before dawn. Scientists rolled out the largest pulse generator Earth had ever seen. It looked like a giant metal coil connected to several power units. It hummed with energy. This time, they aimed it at a coalition command ship, a massive vessel floating low enough in orbit to be targeted. Everyone held their breath. The pulse fired. A bright wave shimmered through the air. It spread upward, invisible at first, then glowing faintly as it moved into the sky. The coalition ship detected the wave too late. Its shields flickered. Lights inside the ship flashed. Systems shut down. Warning alarms echoed through its halls. For the first time during the invasion, a coalition command ship lost power. Inside the ship, officers panicked. They had never seen anything like it. Their screens went black. Their engines stopped. Their communication systems died. They were completely helpless. The ship drifted in orbit, lights flickering like a wounded creature. The fear spreading inside the ship was unlike anything they had experienced. Titans of war were never supposed to feel powerless. But now they were trapped, unable to move, unable to fight, unable to even call for help. Earth saw the result moments later. The giant ship's lights dimmed. Its engines went dark. It stopped moving. People watching from the ground stared in shock. They had no idea how it happened. All they knew was that one of the invaders' largest ships was no longer a threat. Other coalition ships noticed the collapse and began scanning desperately for the source. They tried to understand what humans had done, but their confusion only grew. They didn't know humans had discovered the weakness. They didn't know humans had built the device. They didn't know Earth had changed the war. On Earth, the reaction was stunning. Soldiers and civilians alike felt hope rise like sunlight after a long storm. For the first time, They believed they could win. They believed they could protect their world. The coalition, however, felt something they had not felt in generations. Panic. If one human-made pulse could shut down a command ship, what could 100 pulses do? What if humans built bigger versions? What if they targeted the entire fleet? The coalition realized the truth. If they continued fighting, their fleets might not survive. And if their fleets fell, the entire galaxy would learn that the Great Coalition had been defeated by a world they once thought insignificant. That fear was too heavy to ignore. The moment the command ship went dark, the entire war shifted. Humans had found their turning point. The invaders had lost control, and the galaxy had no idea how much worse it was going to get for the coalition. When the coalition fleets finally stopped firing, the world felt strangely quiet. It was the kind of silence that comes after a long storm, when the wind stops and you can almost hear the earth breathe again. People around the world looked at the sky, not with fear anymore, but with a strange mix of tired pride and disbelief. They had survived something no one ever imagined. They had pushed back an alliance made of dozens of advanced species. And now, something even more unexpected was happening. The same species that voted to subjugate Earth were asking for mercy. It started with a single message. A broken transmission came from a damaged alien cruiser drifting above the Pacific. The voice was shaky, full of confusion and fear. The translator barely kept up, but the meaning was clear. They wanted to surrender. They wanted help. They wanted peace. And once that message spread, more followed. Ships that once fired on cities now flashed signals of surrender. Fleets that once promised to crush humanity began asking for negotiations. People on Earth were stunned. For months, the coalition acted like Earth was nothing more than a problem to be erased. They believed they could control everything, decide the future of humanity, and walk away without consequences. Now they stood powerless, watching humans take control of a situation they never expected to lose. It was almost unreal. Some people felt angry remembering the losses. Some felt relieved. Others felt confused, wondering how such powerful civilizations could fall apart so quickly. Human leaders gathered again, this time not in fear, but in responsibility. They knew the world was watching them. They knew every decision they made would shape Earth's future among the stars. For the first time in history, humans had the upper hand over a galactic coalition. It was both empowering and terrifying. They had to show strength without cruelty, wisdom without weakness. People debated all night about how to respond. Should they punish the invaders? Should they help them? Should they demand answers for the vote that started everything? In the end, they found a middle ground. Earth agreed to listen, but not to bend. If the coalition wanted peace, they had to earn it. They had to face what they did. They had to explain why they attacked, and they had to guarantee it would never happen again. And so, a message went out from Earth, clear and steady. They would accept talks, but under human terms. The aliens agreed instantly. They had no other choice. Their fleets were damaged, their command weakened, their plans shattered. They sent envoys in small shuttles, landing in secure zones with no weapons, no threats, and no demands. They stepped onto Earth soil, not as conquerors, but as humbled visitors. The sight alone felt unreal to the soldiers guarding the meeting points. Some whispered to each other, trying to process what they were seeing. They never thought a day would come when alien captains walked toward them with lowered heads. During the first meeting, the air was tense. Both sides watched each other closely. The aliens were visibly nervous. Their voices were softer, their posture smaller. They spoke carefully, explaining that the vote to subjugate Earth was meant to prevent a future danger. They said they feared human potential, human speed, and most of all, human unpredictability. They had seen species rise before, but none as quickly or as fiercely as humans. Instead of approaching peacefully, they voted to attack before Earth could challenge them one day. They thought it was logical. They thought it was necessary. They realized too late how wrong they were. The human representatives listened, but didn't forgive immediately. Words could not erase months of fear, destruction, and loss. People across the world had lost homes and loved ones. Entire cities had seen the sky burn. Humanity deserved respect, and those who attacked needed to acknowledge it. So humans laid out their conditions. First, every species involved had to take responsibility for the attack. Second, they had to provide resources to help Earth rebuild. Third, they had to promise never to use force against Earth or any young species again. And lastly, they had to give Earth a seat in the galactic discussions, so humanity would never again be judged by others without having a voice. The alien representatives exchanged uneasy looks, but they agreed. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed. They knew saying no was no longer an option. They returned to their fleets and sent out messages to their homeworlds. Within days, responses came back. One species offered medical support. Another offered energy supplies. Another promised to repair damaged satellites and infrastructure. Ships that once carried weapons now carried tools, cargo, and aid. The galaxy slowly shifted from an enemy to an unwilling helper. Meanwhile, ordinary people on Earth reacted differently. Some were proud. Some were still angry. Many simply wanted to move on and rebuild. But there was also amazement. No one expected advanced civilizations to kneel in front of Earth. No one expected them to seek forgiveness. And yet, here they were, doing everything they could to make peace. One strange thing began happening as well. Alien scholars and researchers asked to visit Earth not as invaders, but as learners. They wanted to understand how a young species held together under impossible pressure. They wanted to know how humans adapted so fast, how they worked with limited technology but endless creativity. They studied everything from human strategy to human teamwork, from simple inventions to emotional resilience. The more they learned, the more they respected humans. Some alien crew members even stayed behind to help rebuild cities. People who once feared them started talking to them, sharing stories, comparing cultures, and showing them human food, music, and jokes. Slowly, the tension faded. It didn't disappear, but it softened, replaced by curiosity and understanding. Still, humans never forgot what happened. They didn't become arrogant, but they didn't let their guard down either. They built defenses, improved communication systems, and continued studying alien technology. But they also chose to lead with wisdom. They didn't take advantage of the coalition's weakness. They didn't demand revenge. They demanded fairness and peace. As weeks passed, the galaxy accepted Earth not as a threat, but as a new power. A power that knew how to defend itself without losing its humanity. A power that could show strength without cruelty. A power that believed in cooperation but refused to be controlled. Old empires that once dismissed Earth now treated it with respect. They learned that fear was not the way to deal with humans. The better way was understanding. Across the stars, the story of Earth's resistance spread. It became a lesson, a warning, and an inspiration. It showed that even a world considered small or simple could rise when united. It proved that assumptions can be dangerous, and that every species, no matter how young, deserves a chance to shape its own future. And wherever alien leaders gathered to discuss new policies or disputes, one phrase became common. It echoed through their councils like a reminder they never wanted to forget. Never underestimate Earth, never underestimate humans. They can be kind, but never weak. Peaceful, but never helpless. Ordinary, but extraordinary when it matters. The galaxy had voted once to subjugate Earth. Now those same worlds spoke of partnership. They asked for guidance. They requested friendship. From fear to respect, from conflict to cooperation, everything had changed. But the truth behind it all was simple. Humanity did not win through advanced technology or secret weapons. They won because they refused to break. They held on to each other when the sky fell. They believed in themselves when others doubted them. They fought not for power, but for survival, for family, for home. That spirit became their real strength, the kind the coalition never understood until it was too late. When the peace treaties were finally signed, the world felt a quiet relief. The storm had passed. The danger was over. Earth could breathe again. People began rebuilding their lives, dreaming again, planning again. And while the wounds of war would take time to heal, hope returned. Hope that Earth could grow stronger. Hope that the galaxy could change. Hope that humanity could guide the future instead of being crushed by it. The invaders had once tried to control Earth. Now they stood beside humans, offering help, promising peace, acknowledging their mistakes. And though humanity accepted their support, they never forgot the lesson. Strength matters. Unity matters. And underestimating the human spirit is the greatest mistake anyone can make. The galaxy learned that the hard way, and they would never forget it. When the dust of war finally settled, and the sky no longer carried the glow of battle, people all around Earth woke up each day feeling something they had not felt in a long time. Calm, not complete calm. Because the world had changed forever, but the kind of calm that comes when you know the worst part is behind you. Life began moving again, though slowly, like a machine that had been stopped for too long and needed time to warm up. Earth had survived an attack from a whole galactic coalition. Something no one even dreamed could happen. And not only had humans survived, they had won. It sounded unbelievable, even to the people who lived through it. Many still looked up at the sky sometimes, expecting ships to appear again, expecting alarms to go off again. But instead, all they saw were clear skies or passing clouds. No danger, no tension, just the normal world they once took for granted. But even in peace, everything felt different. With the war over, humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Every person on Earth now lived with the knowledge that countless species existed beyond the stars. Some of those species were now allies. Others were cautious. And some still feared humans more than before. But one thing was certain. No one ignored Earth anymore. In the weeks after the final peace agreements, alien envoys visited many parts of Earth. These visits weren't grand or dramatic like movies. They were simple, careful, and respectful. The aliens walked through areas where rebuilding was happening. They offered supplies, gave advice, and listened to people who shared their stories. It was strange to see beings from other worlds lifting concrete, repairing power lines, restoring water systems, and helping schools reopen. But there they were, doing what they could to fix what they had once helped break. Many humans were still cautious around them, and that was understandable. It takes time for trust to grow again after something like this. But something interesting happened as days went by. Where there was fear before, curiosity took its place. Kids asked questions without hesitation. Elders shared food, trying to find what tastes aliens liked. Some workers even laughed with them when mistakes happened on construction sites. There were moments when people simply stared at each other, both sides trying to understand the other, and then slowly smiled. The alien scholars who stayed behind tried to study humans not as enemies, but as a species that surprised the entire galaxy. They watched how humans rebuilt their homes faster than expected, how they supported each other even when tired, how laughter returned even after hardship. They noted something that no report or data file could ever explain. Humans had a spirit that refused to give up, A spirit that kept rising even when everything seemed lost. A spirit that pushed the world forward again and again. This new era changed the planet in many ways. Earth created new councils and groups to manage contact with other species. Scientists worked day and night to study alien technology, trying to understand what could be used safely on Earth and what required caution. People debated how much Earth should share and how much should stay protected. Everyone agreed that Earth needed to be strong but fair, powerful but peaceful, kind but ready. The galaxy also changed. The vote that once aimed to subjugate Earth became a warning story told across distant worlds. Leaders who once thought humans were reckless now realized they had been wrong. They learned that fear had guided their choices, and they paid a heavy price for it. Slowly, they started creating new rules, rules that said no species should be judged based on potential alone. No species should be targeted simply because others felt threatened. And young planets like Earth should be welcomed, not attacked. Some alien worlds even invited human representatives to visit. They wanted to show goodwill. They wanted to understand humans better. They wanted to learn how Earth defended itself with such determination. At first, only a few humans traveled, mostly diplomats or scientists. They returned with stories of strange skies, peaceful cities, and cultures older than anything on Earth. They described how some aliens decorated their homes with patterns that represented their family history, how others grew glowing plants for light instead of using electricity, how some species communicated using light, pulses instead of sound. The most surprising thing they shared was that many aliens felt guilty. They regretted following the vote blindly. They regretted not questioning their leaders sooner. They regretted hurting a world that had done nothing to deserve it. These conversations didn't erase the past, but they opened the door to a better future. Meanwhile, Earth began to change in ways no one had expected before the war. Young people grew up with the idea that the universe was bigger and more connected than anyone had believed. Many students dreamed of working in space one day. Engineers wanted to build better defenses, cleaner energy systems, and faster spacecraft. Farmers talked about crops that could survive alien climates. Artists painted galaxies instead of cities. Writers imagined stories where humans weren't alone. But even with all this excitement, people did not forget what happened. Memorials were built in different parts of the world, not to spread anger, but to honor those who were lost. The stones stood quietly, names carved into them, reminding everyone that peace came at a price. Visitors from alien worlds sometimes stood in front of those memorials in silence, paying their respects. It showed that even those who once fought against Earth now understood the value of human life. The unity humans showed during the invasion did not fade. Many countries worked closer than before, sharing plans, resources, and knowledge. Walls that once separated them started to crumble. People realized that if they could stand together against a whole coalition of alien species, then they could solve their own problems with cooperation too. Slowly, the galaxy also accepted Earth as a new center of influence. Not an empire, not a ruler, but a steady voice that believed in fairness. Human ideas began to spread ideas about freedom, resilience, and helping others. Some alien worlds adopted new laws that protected weaker species. Others formed groups to prevent any future vote like the one that targeted Earth. The galaxy grew a little wiser. Many alien leaders often reap